Hi guys, welcome to the latest podcast of Yarn in Black. Today I've got a really great friend on today, Rachelle. I'll introduce to you in a moment. But I first would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I'm currently on. I'm here in Balwyn Q on the land of the Wurundjeri people. I want to pay respect to elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to acknowledge any other Aboriginal people that are here today. I'd also like to acknowledge Rachelle, who has come on as our guest for today. Rachelle, how are you?
I'm absolutely wonderful.
It's good to see you. I know it's been a bit hard to get you in, but we finally got you on.
Yeah, I appreciate your patience with me. World is a bit crazy and
Yeah.
busy.
So to start off with, just to let the audience know, who are you, where you're from? Tell us a little bit about
Yeah,
yourself.
my name's Rachelle Towart. I'm a very proud Wanneroo woman from up near Singleton in New South Wales. But I live on the beautiful lands of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people in Canberra. I've been here majority of my life. I'm also the managing director and founder of Pipeline Talent, where Australia's only 100% owned Indigenous executive recruitment agency that focuses on elevating Indigenous executive talent. And I'm really passionate about creating equal opportunities and ensuring that Indigenous voices are heard across leadership and management positions across the country.
Yep. And I know you've worked in leadership before because you used to be at the Leadership Centre.
I
But I want to
did.
ask, what does leadership mean to you?
Yeah, I think leadership is a really important part of what we do and why we do what we do. And, it's about service. It's about guiding and supporting others, listening, and listening and leading by example, especially when it involves engaging or advocating for positive change within our community. I think, for those really, leadership is such an important tool that we do, but we've got to lead. You can't be what you can't see. So it's really important that we look for leaders.
Now, I met you, I'm just trying to work out when I did the leadership course in Canberra.
Will make us seem very old, AJ.
I know. I'm trying to
Well, I
think.
am old.
It would have to be more than 10 years ago now.
Yeah,
And that
absolutely more than 10 years ago.
yeah, and that was actually a really great course. And that course is still going now today. But when it was first created, you were involved in that.
Yeah,
Yes?
I started back at the Leadership Centre in I think it was 2006.
Mm.
And I was a career public servant, and moving up through the runs, and then something happened, and I put my hand up for a job. Michelle Deshong actually said, "Rachelle, you should apply for this job at the Leadership Centre." She had previously just been on a course, so I applied for the job, and I won the job. And then somebody said, "Well, where's your leave without pay application?" And I went, "Oh, do I need to leave the public service?" And yeah, so luckily they had this thing called leave without pay, which was pretty exciting. So I took 12 months leave without pay, and I've got to say that 3 months into that 12 months, I knew that I was never going back to being a public servant. And so I rang them and I said, "Thanks, I found my joy and my happy place." And so I was there for a year or so, and then the board asked me if I wanted to have a crack at being the CEO of the organisation, which was, I think I described myself at that point in time, an accidental CEO. And for more reasons than another, I'm accident prone, but right place, right time. It certainly made me who I am today.
And what qualifications did you get after school yourself?
Yeah,
You
so
have
I barely completed year 10 at school, and that was, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I didn't like the style of learning, so I was a bit of a rat bag of a kid, but I was really good at sport. And so that sort of held me together. It wasn't until, I thought that I was going to be a hairdresser. That's what I wanted to be when I left school. My aunt made me go and volunteer down at the local hairdressing salon for a week before she'd sign me up for an apprenticeship. And I lasted half a day because I wasn't sweeping up no one's hairs on the floor.
Okay.
And so she said, well, you need to go back to school or you need to get another job. And I went, okay, well, I might go and learn how to do typing because, I'm 53 and proud of it. So typing and shorthand were very much a thing back then. And so I learned it pretty quickly. And from there, I didn't finish that qualification. I went straight into a job that paid me more than my parents because I was very good at typing and shorthand and I can speed read. And so I found myself working for ministers and great executive. And it wasn't until maybe one or two jobs in that I was working for a woman called Dawn Casey. She's now at Nurture, I think. And she said to me, Rachelle, you're really, you've got something, you've got to go back to school. And so work paid for me to go and do my year 11 and 12 at night time. And so I managed to get through that while working full time. And then I started, doing little bits and pieces and then putting them all together and MBA later on down the track. And education probably wasn't my thing, but now I enjoy listening to podcasts. And, I think the best form of me for education in terms of where I want to go and where I want to get to is done through observation. So looking at those leaders and going, well, how did you get to where you are? And what can I learn from you? How do you present yourself in a meeting? How do you present yourself in community? Those things through observation are really, really important for me. That's my best form of learning, seeing somebody do it, and then I can go and do it myself and asking questions along the way.
And I think that was very reflective in when you were talking to us as participants in the Cert 3 or Cert 2 of Indigenous leadership, that there's different ways that we can show leadership, and we don't always have to do it as being in the front of the room, but we can be pushing people up hills and we can be behind people and still be the leader. But you're able to demonstrate many different ways of being able to show competence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I love the quote of, it's not the position you hold, it's how you hold the position. And for me, that's a really critical way of thinking about career and where you want to go and how you want to get there. I started Pipeline Talent after being at the Leadership Centre for 14 years and, very well recognised for my work in Indigenous leadership and governance. Qantas had done a story of me in their in-flight magazine, and I'm sitting on the plane over to Western Australia to go to a board meeting. And I knew that my time at the Leadership Centre was very much fast approaching, and I'd been contacted by other recruiters saying, hey, Rachelle, do you want a job somewhere else? And this one job, I said, okay, well, let me put my hand up and I'll throw an application in. And I'd just been told this day that I had won this job. I hadn't even told my husband that I'd gone for this job or anybody around me that I'd gone for this job. And they said, oh, when can you start? And I went, well, give me the weekend because I've just got to duck over to Perth. And so I'm sitting on this plane ride over to Perth, and Qantas had done a story of me in their in-flight magazine. And so I'm sitting in row 30 next to the loo reading this article about myself. And I went, wow, this is super cool. You made it when you're in a Qantas magazine. It's pretty cool. But I turned the page and there's this story about women in the pipeline and how women's numbers were increasing across corporate community and government. And it got me thinking, if I replace the word woman with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, where would the numbers be in executive roles across the country, in board? And I started thinking about the numbers. And at that stage, we put hundreds of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people through this leadership program. And I've gone, why don't we have the numbers that we should?
Yeah.
And I know the people that could do these jobs. And so I literally jumped off the plane and rang the guy who'd offered me the job and said, I'm not taking the job. I'm going to start my executive recruitment agency. And so nearly going into its 9th year, I haven't looked back. But I had to unpack the why. Why don't we have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in middle senior executive roles? And a lot of it is to do with feedback. So we're not given feedback. If you shit at policy, you shit at policy. There's nothing racist about that statement. It's hey, policy's not for you. Let's work out what is. And so that's probably one of my big things that I'm really proud of the work that Pipeline does, is that we give feedback. And there's not just, there was somebody better. It was, how do we give feedback to you? I'm committed to diversity and inclusivity, and in everything that we do, we try to make the recruitment process more transparent, more equitable, more respectful, and bringing the unique perspective of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander candidates that we bring to the workforce.
Yeah. Do you still think there's any stereotypes that employers might have around employing Aboriginal people?
Yeah, and I think that's evident in that we still seem to be in the middle entry level and middle management, and so can we do the executive such? Still we don't have. If you think about the federal government, we don't have a secretary of a federal government department. Yes, we have agency heads, but that's not a secretary of a department. Do we have an ASX 200 CEO? No, we don't. So, and a lot of organisations have got commitment to employment of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. But where is that commitment to employ Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in executive roles? Having said that, when I recruit an individual into a very senior role, say somebody who's a $300,000 salary, those guys want to be recognised because they can do the job, and culture is always a bonus. We don't want to be just appointed because we're mob. We want to be recruited because we can do the job.
Do you think, is there support and mentoring for executive level Aboriginal people out there?
Yeah, there is. But I think you've got to go and look for it. One of the big things in terms of that we need to do a lot better is career planning. We don't think about career planning in the way that we should. If you're a high performer, you normally get tapped on the shoulder and say, come work for us, and then you get higher and higher. And we sort of settle for second best. But, if I think about my career and the work that I do, and the work that I see people being put their hand up for, there's no planning that goes into it. What is your vision for your career? And sit down and really think about what that is, and rather than just, I'm going to get 10 grand more if I move jobs, because the number one reason at the moment that anybody's moving jobs is for a pay rise because of the cost of living. And if you just move jobs for a pay rise, then you're not going to stay for long because the value alignment isn't there. Yeah. The number one reason that you want to move from one job to another is because your career aligns with it, and your values align with the organisation that you're moving to.
Yeah. One of the biggest buzzwords that are around at the moment is reconciliation. What does reconciliation mean to you?
I reckon that it has to do with, the future. I think for me, those who have reconciliation action plans, I'll come at it from a different angle, if you like, AJ, that reconciliation plans are part of the puzzle for organisations to think about having Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people within their workforce. But for me, the number one thing that people forget about is the value proposition. So I'm very values driven, because I see when people go into an organisation where their values aligned, that they're really successful. And if you think about the number of jobs on Seek today, there are nearly 27 to 28,000 jobs that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people either identified or encouraged to apply, or we'd love to see an application from mob. And so how do you, as an employer, stand out to be an employer of choice? But if there's 27 to 28,000 choices, how do you stand out as that number one choice? So that's a really important piece to get right for organisations when they're thinking about reconciliation, is the value alignment. And the number two thing is so after you've got your EVP, thinking about the employment strategy. So once I've got Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people working within the business, how do I keep them? How do I grow them? How do I make them successful? And how do I get an executive into the future from this employee? And then putting into place action plans and strategies. And I'm actually speaking at the Reconciliation Australia conference next week that very much on the same sort of subject of, value propositions and employment strategies to retain and grow our mob into the future executives of this country.
Yeah. How long do you think it will take for Aboriginal people, Torres Strait Islander people, to be able to be in those executive positions?
Yeah, we're starting to appoint them now, which is really exciting. We put somebody this year into a $500,000 job. That's life-changing. Yes. We are putting people into boards, which is also great. For far too long, we're on advisory boards and we're not on the real thing, which has always been a challenge for me. And we will see more and more Aboriginal people because we are a small part of the population too. So, I think the numbers of CA and CPA qualified Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people are under 200 or getting close to 200. Psychologists, I think we've got about 300. But our population is, half of our population is under the age of 25. So they're all at uni. There's many mob that are at uni at the moment who are getting great educational qualifications and getting great opportunities to excel. There's great career and development programs like Career Trackers and the Aurora Foundation. We've got people at Harvard, Oxford, and kicking some great goals. And I think organisations, particularly corporates, are now seeing the payoff on, having mentoring and great entry-level programs that see people succeed for future careers. So I don't think we're far off. I do think maybe not in my lifetime will we see an Aboriginal Prime Minister. But I think there will be one.
Do organisations try to recruit Aboriginal people for positions, but is there still a belief there at all about they really want Aboriginal people to provide cultural support and still educate other staff members, that extra cultural load that we actually hear about?
What we are seeing now is this real trend. So for example, if we've got 300 Aboriginal psychologists across the country, and somebody rings me and says, "Hey, Rachelle, can you find us an Aboriginal psychologist?" And I go, "Well, that's going to be challenging. What's the remuneration piece like?" And they go, "Well, we can't pay them more than what our mainstream psychologist is being paid." And I go, "Well, the housing, I think that needs to be challenged because if you think about it from a housing market, if you like, when there's not a lot of housing, the housing prices go up. So if there's not a lot of psychologists, the remuneration should go up. So there are many organisations now that are thinking about paying a cultural load on top of a wage, which could be maybe an additional $5,000 per annum to $10,000. I think the university sectors are very much into adapting a cultural load, and I absolutely can see that happening because the market is so small, and if you want to pay for the talent that we have, if you want us for the talent that we have, then the remuneration needs to be a little bit higher.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see that starting to be recognised in organisations, because I do a lot of work with EAP and support and mentoring of Aboriginal staff in organisations, and one of the things that I still hear a lot is that the organisation still expects them to educate their colleagues, or expects them to, every Aboriginal issue that ever comes into the organisation, let's go and talk to them about it. And
and which is the importance of the cultural load, right? Because you can't turn off being Aboriginal. You are Aboriginal, you're not Aboriginal 9 to 5. You're blackfella 24/7. So and the work related issues get you 24/7, not 9 to 5. So if you're a forward facing if you're just if I'm just Rachelle in a mainstream job, do I get a cultural load? Probably not. But if my work requirement is that I'm representing on cultural issues more than 9 to 5, then cultural load should be on the table.
Yeah.
And I think the more people don't think about it, but I often refer to it like a first aid allowance. I think back in the day when I was a public servant, I did a first aid course, and then I got an extra $17 in my pay packet a week for having my first aid certificate. So I don't think that much is, why a cultural load shouldn't be much different.
I actually like that concept. I think you've just explained that really well for some people that may not actually understand it.
Yeah.
But I think that practical first aid thought process is probably going to give some of our listeners a very different understanding of what cultural load.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, it's the forward facing responsibility that we have.
A question I have for you: while you're at school, I'm going to take you back a little bit. While you're at school, how much Aboriginal studies did you actually learn?
None. None. I'm 53.
Yeah.
53 and proud, that there was none. But I became a kinship carer, or a mum again, to my brother's babies. So I started Pipeline over 8 years ago now, and 4 months into starting the business, I got a phone call from my mum saying, you need to come and get your brother's baby. And I said, what baby? And then a few months later, baby number 2 arrived. So I've got a 29-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And literally an hour ago, I went to my son's school assembly, and he's in year 2, and they sung the Australian anthem in language.
Oh, wow.
So how cool is that? That would never have happened. My little boy, every year at the school, they at the end of the year assembly, the Aboriginal kids in the class get a possum skin, and they're able to take that possum skin every year, and by the time they graduate in year 6, they'll have enough to make a cloak. How cool is that?
Beautiful,
isn't it? It just makes, like, every he's got 3 now. He'll have 3 by the end of the year, and every year it just humbles me to think that that's what this school does.
That's a big big difference. And it's a shame that
It's a
lot of
public
other
school.
schools, yeah, that's a really great model that could
Yeah.
be put into other schools.
Yeah.
That's
Super cool.
yeah. Now in workplaces,
Yeah.
do you think that there's enough cultural awareness training actually happening within organizations, or when organizations come to you and say, hey, we want to recruit an Aboriginal person, how do you ensure that that organization is going to be culturally safe for the talent that you put in?
Yeah. I think we're in a little bit more of a different space to most. We're recruiting, anything that's sort of over the 130K base salary. So
Yeah.
we sort of know that the organisations that we're working with are quite culturally safe. And I know that the value alignment for me, I've got my value alignment has to align with the organisations that we work. And if they don't align, then I won't work with them. If they're just ringing me, oh, we need a RAP coordinator. No.
Yeah.
And I've had to, I've knocked back work because of that, because that's not what we're about. And we've got a couple of new products coming in early 2025 that you won't be able to become a member unless you've got an employment strategy, a value proposition. You guarantee to give our candidates feedback, and if you don't, we'll boot you off. You won't be able to be a member. So, I'm wise enough and old enough now to call it out. And even just helping businesses write their job descriptions better. How you advertise a job. We're put into the same basket as used car salesmen and real estate agents, the poor people in the recruitment industry. But we're more than that. We're not a dump and run agency. We provide our candidates with the opportunity to take up their first 100 days coaching as part of any placement that we do. We work with the hiring managers to make sure that they give feedback. I won't work with anybody who doesn't give feedback to anybody that they interview. And I'm really, really strong on that, because just by simply saying, oh, there was somebody better, that's not feedback.
Feedback's an interesting concept, because I think, as you just said then, people will have different understandings about what feedback is. How do you define feedback? What would you say is a really like a model of feedback that should be given to?
Yeah. So those that are thinking about, here's my advice, career advice, is to sit down and have or prepare for a real conversation with your manager and or supervisor to say, I have a plan that I want to be X in 12 months' time. Do you think that this goal is realistic?
Yeah.
Get their response. The next questions that I would ask is, in order for me to do that, I think my key strengths are X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
To what extent do you agree? Is there anything that you would change? Is there anything that you would add? Next question. I believe that I need to work on X, Y, Z. Is there anything that you would change? Is there anything that you would add? To what extent do you agree? These are the things that I need to have to be successful. Might be some acting arrangements at the next level. It might be a secondment. To what extent do you agree? Is there anything that you would change? Is there anything you would add? And by framing those questions in a really way that you're going to get feedback is really critical to getting and giving and receiving feedback. But you've got to be okay to receive it as well. Like, it's just not all on somebody else, telling you you're great at this. You've got to, if they're saying that you're not so great at it, you've got to be able to listen to that. And what do you take away from it?
Yeah. Do you think people are always great at receiving feedback?
Yeah, but what do you do with it?
Yeah.
I often think, And the lateral violence piece is really quite interesting around employment. Such and such got a job. Well, did you apply for it? No. Well, why are you running them down for they got that job? Oh, look at that. We get it all the time. And we need to stop it, celebrate people's successes. That could have been you, but you didn't put your hand up for it.
Yeah.
And I think I was just talking to my staff over lunch going, some people live on this place called Someday Island. And this is a great leadership lesson that I learned from the Leadership Centre days. Someday Island, people love to go there. It's a great place. There's sunshine, there's surf, there's sand, it's wonderful. But it's just there. And someday you're going to do something.
Yeah.
You need to get off Someday Island and go somewhere.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting back and throwing stones at others that are successful and are putting their hands up and are, I'm sure that there's been many occasions for you, AJ, that people go, oh, you won another award. Well, did you, did you apply for it? Did somebody nominate you?
Yeah.
So get off Someday Island, you fellas.
You have to, yeah. And if that's your tip for everybody, just get off Someday Island.
And go somewhere. Yeah, go on a holiday somewhere. If you're thinking about, one day I'm going to study. Someday I'm going to study. I'm going to go and apply for my master's or go and study law. Yeah. Go there. Do it.
Yeah. I always say to people, you need a dream, but you need to actually go for the dream because otherwise it just remains the dream.
Yeah, well, Walt Disney famously said, if you don't have a dream can't come true.
Yes.
And that's such a great, it's a great motto of how do you write those things down too? So planning is really key. It's great to have a dream, but you've got to see something to do it. So writing it down, having accountability, giving yourself timelines to when you're actually going to achieve it, because otherwise it does become a someday situation.
And realistic timelines as well.
Yeah. But if you think about career and career planning, so if you've heard, your listeners have heard me say many times, I'm 53 and very proud of it, but retirement age for me might be 65. So I've still got a few years left in my career. So what am I going to do with that time? And I'm sure some of your listeners might be in their 30s. So if they're they've just turned 30 today, they've got 35 years of career and work. So what does that career look like and how are they going to do it? Getting people to think about the lifestyle that they would like to live. Lifestyle for me is really important because your lifestyle changes as you go through different stages of your life. I'm dealing with aging parents now, but I'm also dealing with young children. So I've got a double whammy. And, so that if I was just dealing with aging parents, I'd still need to change my lifestyle. If I look at what do I want to have in my lifestyle, so it might be every year I want to go on a holiday and I want to buy my own home. What income do I need to have to make those things a reality? And then you can sort of work, well, what careers are in that sort of pay structure or that sort of those opportunities are in that monetary scale. So that will also help you with career planning. To work yourself backwards.
You're making our listeners really think, Rachelle. You really are.
Well, if you think, in order for me to own my own home, for me to get a mortgage, do I need $100,000? Is that enough?
Yeah.
And so, what jobs are in that are going to pay? What jobs are going to pay me $100,000? And what qualifications do I need to have to be able to get that job?
Yeah.
So it's working backwards rather than working forwards and not thinking about all of that.
Yeah. Question: if I could give you $1 zillion and a magic wand, my daughter's giving me a magic wand right here, and you could fix anything in Aboriginal issues anywhere, what would you pick? What would you try to look at? And you've got zillions of dollars and the wand.
And the wand. I love that it's a pink fairy wand. Look, there would be a lot of things around two things that I'm doing for my business because I'm doing it on my own. One of them is to create a reverse job board for Aboriginal candidates. So blind profiles, giving them opportunities, so highlighting the candidate rather than highlighting the employer. And I've got another couple of ideas that I would love to see come through. I would love to see my boys thrive and survive and thrive. So money towards them and their future. Mental health is another area that I'm hugely passionate about, because all of us have been impacted by some form of trauma, grief, and loss in our lives. I would like to see that the drug problem that we have in our country is there's solutions and there's places for people to go long term to support drug-related issues. And I would love issues that relate to domestic and family violence to be solved. And I don't know what that looks like. I'd also love recently being diagnosed with MS, and I would really love to see that there's some cures for some horrible diseases for our mob, brain, heart, kidney. Yeah. So from really, self-centered to, big picture.
I've got my wand.
Going to make it happen.
We're going to make it happen. And sometimes we have to think too for our people that sometimes this may not, as you said before, may not happen in my lifetime, but it's going to happen in my kids' lifetime or my grandkids' lifetime.
Yeah. I want to be a grandma too.
Yeah. But I do like how you mentioned before that, 54% of our population is under the age of 25.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, 50%.
I don't think a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
50%, yeah. Which means that huge. Really part of closing the gap that people need to think about is how are we going to move that 54% of the population under the age of 25 to get to somewhere like 65 and above.
Yeah.
Because we know that our population at 65 and above is actually quite low compared to non-Indigenous people. Which means
AJ, don't get me started on that one, because early access to superannuation, bloody hell.
But it is about really
in line with, we should be able to get access to our super in line with close the gap targets where they're sort of sitting.
Yes. But I wasn't going to take it there. I was just
going to we won't.
Get that 54% of the population into that 65, but then looking at making sure that our kids actually do get to year 12, that they do get qualifications, that
it's the only close the gap target that we're actually meeting is year 12 completion rates.
Yes.
Which is huge.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of listeners have actually said to me over the time from a few of the guests that I've had on, that this is the first generation for a lot of Aboriginal families for kids to get to year 12. Yeah. Now, some of us might have been able to do year 12, and I did year 12, but I did year 12 when I was 23. I didn't do it when I was like 16. And you actually went back and did year 12.
Yeah, I was 23 as well.
So
do things backwards. Like I had my tonsils out when I was 30, Who says it's got to be, this way?
But for a lot of people, they don't realize how recent in history this stuff really actually is.
Mm.
And I think the messages are just starting to get out. Now, I'm watching the time. My final question is, what would you like people to walk away with from our yarn this afternoon?
Yeah, I think my key message would be that the talent and potential within Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities is immense. Embracing diversity isn't just about meeting targets. It's about recognising the value that different perspectives bring to decision-making, creativity and growth. I think it's, really important to reflect and to get off Someday Island and to put your hand up and have a crack. The best thing that I ever did in my career was to be brave.
Yeah.
And you never know where it's going to lead you. Because I would not be. There would be nobody, if I was going back and telling my 10-year-old self that Rachelle would be running an executive recruitment agency, running her own business with 12 staff and kicking big goals and just about to launch 2 new businesses, I would say you are nuts. No way.
Yeah.
But because I put my hand up and I had a crack, and my favorite song by Chumbawamba, You Get Knocked Down, but You Get Up Again, is my favorite. What do you learn when you're getting back up?
And that's really good. I really love that. And very inspiring. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Love your work. Talk to you soon. And guys, I'll see you at the next podcast.